So actually it's 94. I screwed up a little bit and it dropped to 94. But we're still in there. We're still in the game. And nice to see all of you. Great to be here. I'm going to talk about three things this afternoon, all of them very quickly. Maybe we can do questions after that. For those of you who were here before or who follow the Strategic News Service, you know that we have been extremely focused on the role of intellectual property in the global economy and how it affects tech companies. And as a quick update, you will have noticed that the theft of IP is increasing in rate and intensity since we talked last year. And those thefts include things like RSA getting hacked for their master keys, the master keys then being used on others who are clients of RSA, including Lockheed. The theft last week of important information that would allow the creation of badges for entry into DoD buildings around the world. So these are non-trivial hacks, penetrations, and they continue at an alarming rate. We have created a new consortium, which we're just announcing, called the IP Protection Alliance. And the initial members include SNS, Google, Nuance, and Accenture. And we are going to fight like hell to try to slow down or arrest the transfer of intellectual property from those who invent to those who steal or who force disclosure. And anybody who's interested in that, please just contact me. You can find me easily. Google me, and I'd love to hear your ideas, and if you want to join up, we'd love to have you as members. So I think this is one of those let George do it stories where everybody else hopes that the other guy will take care of the problem. Don't do that. Just help take care of it yourself. It's really important. So we welcome assistance, and we welcome you getting involved. The second thing I'd like to do is talk a little bit about economics, because that's always the playground where we all live. You can't sell things to people with no money. So it's very important to know how the world's going to do this year. And I'm going to take care of that within about 10 seconds. So we'll do that very quickly. And the theme in my mind is this is the end of business as usual. It doesn't matter where you look. All around the world right now, it's changing. Big changes, not minor incremental changes. And I'll run through what I think are some of the key issues that you might be yourself focused on, depending upon where you buy and sell. So, of course, we're all watching the EMU, or the EU, and I'm thinking that I picture Angela Merkel with her face on not just Der Spiegel, but probably Time magazine. I think she will be perceived as the heroine in this story, although many may see her already as a villain. I think Angela will personally be responsible for saving whatever is left of the EMU and the euro. And my guess is we're going to have three Europes. I think we'll have a Nordic Europe that stays out, we'll have a core Europe that stays in, and we're going to have a marginal Europe that gets either kicked out or marginalized in some way. So three Europes going forward instead of one. Number two, China. My thought is the emperor isn't worrying very much. China's going to hit a whole bunch of walls all at once, and you're starting to see that happen now. This isn't really a business problem for them as much as it is structural. So in no particular order, one is pollution. How do you push forward if your children and old people are dying of diseases because they can't breathe the air and they can't drink the water? You've all seen this scandal with the U.S. Embassy publishing the data about the air in Beijing and Beijing fighting the release of it. They finally agreed to allow the embassy to publish the science on the air that you breathe if you live in Beijing. This is just one little part of the iceberg. But it's really important, I think, to recognize how bad things are already and how hard it's going to be to fix them. So with all of their muscle numbers of people, will, and top-down abilities, solving the problem of clean water and clean air is a non-trivial problem. I don't know how they will do it. I'm not sure it's doable in the short term. And so what does that do? What does that create in China? Does it create political dissension? Does it create anger with the people? We've already had whole towns tell the federal government of China they will not allow a chemical plant to be built where it was supposed to be built. And they've gotten together and had protests. And so I see these big things happening in China which are sometimes discussed and which are really important, and they're kind of off the map in terms of tech and finance. One more I'll mention, banking. China is not a free market, and I think we should go back to calling them communist China, not to be mean, but just to remind ourselves who we're talking about here. 80% of the companies in China are owned by the state. That's not a free market. So we're in a situation where the complete banking system of China is what I would call a set of distribution channels. They aren't banks. Now, unfortunately, it's the same thing in the United States. So we can no longer stand on our back feet and go, yeah, we're the U.S., you know, we have this robust banking system. Unfortunately, the bank lobby is taking care of that, so that's not true anymore. But aside from too big to fail, we'd like to think that we could get back to the Volcker Rule or the Glass-Steagall Act and have real banks in a real free market that have to stand on their own. And that's what we ought to have. And China doesn't have that. So they just have these things they pour money into, and they tell them where to lend the money. And if that stops, they just pour more money in the other end. You can't have a robust economy in that kind of situation, I don't believe. So there are a lot of walls like this. Oh, by the way, the result of that is you don't know how much money you owe or is owed to you. And in this case, my understanding is if all those debts did not get repaid, the amount that the government would lose would be more than what we owe them. It would be more than their treasury. So it's a big problem. Number 3, Japan. I think Japan is keeping 2 or 3 sets of books. And it makes all the stories about Japan very confusing. People have a great lifestyle in Tokyo, pretty much, except for tsunamis and nuclear reactors. The companies do pretty well, and then they report GDPs that are underground. So, you know, figure it out. The Putin switcheroo, bad idea. Bad Vlad, bad dog. So the people of Russia, for the first time after years of abuse, seem to be standing up and saying that they're really disgusted with the clarity and transparency of this fraud. And they're really sick of it. I don't know what they're going to do about it. Probably nothing. But it makes Russia a confused political story. For the first time, they actually look like they care about their own freedom. Number 5, Mexico falls off